Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm taking my first look at the old school reference and index compilation, or Osric. This is the updated second edition version of the compilation. So here it is in softcover, and you can get this on Lulu for about $13. And the PDF is actually free there as well. So combined up, getting a soft cover and the PDF, $13. So you really can't go wrong with that kind of a price. So basically, what is Osric? So Osric is a compilation of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. The compilation does not include Unearthed Arcana. It does not include the Monster Manual 2 or any of the other supplements where classes might have been introduced, races might have been introduced, or skills such as the skills such as the Wilderness Survival Guide skills or the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide skills were also not included into this. So this is kind of a rules as written first edition Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, with one exception that I've noticed so far, and that is that if you go back to the Player's Handbook and you look at classes and racial permission to open up those classes, you'll notice that in the earliest editions of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, dwarves could not be clerics, but in here you can. So there are some of those optional rules that were introduced a little bit later on in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition that are here as well. So without further ado, let's go right into taking a look at the PDF itself. So, and I'm going to change the sizes and of these pages to help you see it a little bit more. So this is the editor-in-chief, Stuart Marshall. Now, the initial author of the first edition was Matthew Finch, and so what this edition here does is it takes what Matthew Finch had done and just kind of tweaked it a little bit and made some modifications. I don't have the first edition, so perhaps the first edition of Osric included that restriction of dwarves not being allowed to be clerics, but here it may have introduced that optional rule. So we're going to go forward, and I like to take a look right into the table of contents so you can kind of see the layout of the book. So there are, in the appendices area, you have the list of spells, monsters, magic items, and such. But going right into here in character creation, you have the ability scores. And if you're familiar with my channel, or if you're familiar just in general with role-playing games, you will recognize these 6 stats as being, or abilities as being very commonplace. I mean, virtually all OSR and the earlier and even modern edition of Dungeons & Dragons or Advanced Dungeons & Dragons included these 6 stats. You have your character races, and these are dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, halflings, half-orcs, and humans. Your character classes: assassins, clerics, druids, fighters, illusionists, magic users, paladins, rangers, thieves, and then the ability to either multi-class or dual class. You have your 9 alignment system, You have the monetary system, the equipments, armor, and height and weight optional rules. Then you go right into spells and so on. So we'll continue going through this here. And you will start to see how things are organized. So here for monsters, just as an example, and one of the things I think they tweaked, well here, is that they created the categories of different monsters that you'd come across, or what they describe sometimes as men, beasts, and monsters. So you have the men, and then the various versions of men. Demi-humans are in their own category. Humanoids are in their own category. And then giants, dragons, demons, devils, dinosaurs, and so on. So it's not alphabetically listed like the monster manual was. It actually puts them into their own little categories, and then it gives you the information within that, which I think is a big improvement from the way it was originally printed, and so on. So let's start taking a look. I mean, obviously there's a long list of spells and equipment and such. So the preamble here is explaining, what was the purpose of recreating the first edition and putting it out as a second edition. I write this now with the advantage of considerable hindsight, and I can say that Osric's success has gone beyond anything we expected. I certainly never expected such demand for a print edition, and neither did I expect to receive so much help in drafting it. All right, so I mean, the real purpose, or the initial purpose of Osric was to reprint and get print copies out there of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, without you having to go out and scour the internet or your used bookstores and such, trying to get original hard copies of the of the game system. So, and this is a compilation and reference guide. So even if you have the original hardcovers, this is a very useful side book that you'd want to keep at your side as a DM or as players, to do a quick reference and looking for rules. It's much easier than flipping through 3 different books if you have it all here in one. And so they go on. So we go into creating characters, and you will notice some things are a little bit different here, in that they don't have those minimums and maximums that you see in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, the original hard copies. So, like here under 1875, strength, you would have that is the maximum for a female human character. And let me just double check and make sure that I've stated that correctly. Maximum strength possible for a male elf or a female half-orc is 1875. So you don't have these limitations, whether they be racial or gender limitations. They're just telling you what the score is considered to, what the score and its modifiers are. Same thing with dexterity, so there are no racial or gender bonuses or deficits. And continuing on through the rest of the character, through the rest of the attributes. Now we go into character races. And as I say, I made it a point to talk about dwarves, and you can see here, unlike in the hardcovers, you can see here. Let's see where they have it. Oh, here they have the racial limitations. That's interesting. So, 8 and 18 strength, but they have the level limitations for various various classes. So you can have a dwarf cleric, but they're still capped at 8. Assassin 9 and such. So here you have the limitations written um, in just a different section instead of on the chart itself. Let's take a look at elves and see where their limitations are. Um, Here's their permitted classes, multi-class restrictions, ability scores. So here they have their minimum and maximum. So their maximum is an 18, minimum is a 3, and so there you have it. This is where they put them. Like I said, this is my first look through it as well, so you are seeing my experience as a person looking through it the first time, as you would if you were looking through this compilation for the first time as well. There's something, with starting ages that I'll talk about a little bit later, and it's just a personal preference of mine. Um, and there seems to be like some discussion going on in various social media sites about starting characters and such, and I'll talk a little bit about that briefly. So your character classes, I'm always happy to see that they kept the original character classes. So you have assassin and you have thief, and later on they removed both assassins and thieves. They removed assassins completely, and they renamed thieves as rogues. And so on. So we will go, let's jump to, we'll skip over spells, and it's a huge section in here as well. And we are going to go, here we go. Well, let's get to the monster manual where it begins. I believe it begins with humans, so monsters. Okay, so monster statistics, tribal spellcasters. Kind of weird that they put them there, but here we have men. And so you have your normal men, normal fighter, magic user, cleric, thief, bandits, berserkers, buccaneers, a dervish, pilgrims, merchants. Then you go into your demi-humans, and here they are listed under, so you have your dwarves, your elves, and this is obviously for NPCs that you might encounter, gnomes, halflings. You have your humanoids, bugbears, cavemen, gnolls, goblins, grimlocks, hobgoblins, lizardmen, kobolds, orcs, troglodytes. Then you go into your various types of giants. And so on. So it goes through and it categorizes them a little bit differently than the original Monster Manual 1. It puts them, instead of just alphabetical order, it puts them into their categories and then they're listed as in alphabetical order. Dinosaurs and such. So let's go to the near the end, the appendix section. Let's see where we get to that. And so here we go into treasure. So you have your treasures, and you can use these randomized charts to randomly create treasures and so on. It talks about, it will talk about layer types and such, give you all of your charts that you need in order to generate treasure troves and other other types of, whether it be coins picked up off of those that you have slain, or what you'll find in a dragon's hoard, and so on. And it goes all into the magic items and such. And then here we have saving throws. So here we're probably going to what you would find on a DM screen. So you have your compiled tables. So all of the tables that you would have, and these I mean I really like these as far as if you are playing a spellcaster. I mean, it's great to have this. I would print this out and just keep it alongside my character sheet so that I can quickly see, well, what are all of the potential spells that I have for my cleric or my druid. You know, what is my fighters' saving throws and their combat tables and so on. So these would be nice handouts to give to your players for them to have the appropriate chart for their character class. I mean, here's the thieves table. So I have everything here for thieves. Let's see. I mean, I wish that this was separated. They didn't have the paladin to hit chart on the same page as the thieves table and their hit chart. I would have preferred to have them completely separate. That's just a formatting issue. And then here we have a character sheet. Landscape, which is somewhat different to have a landscape character sheet. And there we go. So as you can see, you know, I think it's a very, very useful compilation, and certainly something that I would keep on the side if I were DMing an Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition campaign. It's certainly, like I said, with those character sheets, I would certainly hand out those individual compiled charts to each of the players at my table for their appropriate character classes, because I think that's really useful for them to have as a quick reference as well. And you know, getting back to what I was talking about as far as, you know, some of the trends that I've been seeing in the hobby, or at least by some individuals in the hobby, where they're talking about player agency and such like that with the, you know, with the classes, and allowing all of this flexibility with letting players play their, the characters as they wish and such. And I know I had mentioned it when I came across the starting age, the starting ages for characters, and something that I tend to do in order to limit the excessive background development of player characters is that I have the I have my players when they roll up their first level characters, have them start out at the minimum starting age for their for their race and class. And the reason for that is that I like to focus more on what their character story is going to become rather than what it was. And so if you have someone who's starting out as an 18-year-old human fighter, you're not going to have a huge backstory. I mean, you might have some family history and maybe the profession of your parents has had an influence on some of the skills that you might have or some of the interests that you might have. But you're not going to have this huge, you know, 8-page backstory about an 18-year-old. Um, I mean, you might have a longer backstory depending on the race of your character. A starting elf character might be, 100 plus years old, but I like to focus more on what's the story that they are going to help create moving forward rather than that. But I'll probably do a separate video on that. And the other reason why it's important when you're dealing with first edition Dungeons and Dragons is that it's a less forgiving system than Dungeons and Dragons Fifth Edition. Your characters are more likely to die in this version of the game, and so to spend that much time on generating a backstory is something that editions like this, or OSR like this is going to curtail that. It's going to kind of make that unnecessary to really concern yourself with because it is just a little bit more dangerous in comparison to newer editions of Dungeons and Dragons. So once again, I hope you like this video. I hope you're enjoying the new sound. I don't know how you're going to hear it. I'm using a new mic. You notice I'm not wearing my headset. So I'm hoping that sound quality is a little bit clearer, and the output might be loud, so you might have to adjust for that. I'm hoping that it's not abusively loud. So once again, thanks for joining. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And tomorrow is actually the anniversary of my channel, so I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow to celebrate that and to talk a little bit about the channel and where it's looking to go for this next year, moving forward. And once again, thanks for joining. I hope you're staying safe and healthy out there, and coming up on the new year. So I wish you all a happy new year. And here's looking forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You all have a great afternoon.